Thursday, 6:10 p.m., Bluebird Diner, Woodruff Road. Neon flickers, bluebird, blue bee, bacon in the air. A waitress who calls everyone honey. I'm 10 minutes early, because I'm always early, and I'm fixing tissue paper over a baby quilt for my granddaughter. Then I hear it, my daughter's voice, by the dumpster, by the employee door, whispering like a secret that wants an audience. If Mom signs the papers Friday, we can list the house by spring. Magnolia Ridge has a wait list. Get her slotted now. Less drama later. The quilt slides off my lap. My hands don't feel like mine. I walk into the Bluebird with a smile I fastened like a church hat. Surprise! Balloons, daisies, a pink sash that said, "Sassy at 66." A plate I didn't order, a chair I didn't choose, and under the laughter, one drumbeat. Sign here, Mother. Here's what they didn't plan for. Friday morning, I take those same hands to senior legal aid. A woman with a pen and a map of the truth circles a line and says, "Power of attorney means power." So tonight, I'll eat the cake and wear the sash. Tomorrow, I'll learn what papers give back and what papers take. This isn't a story about being put somewhere for my own good. It's the one where I choose where I stand and what I sign. Keep watching. The pie gets served, the notary shows up, and the pen stays in my hand. "Surprise!" everyone shouted when I opened the door, which is a funny thing to yell when somebody has to lean into a squeaking hinge to get inside. There were mason jars filled with daisies, a foil balloon that had already lost its will to float, and a pink sash that said "Sassy at 66," which Leah looped over me like a pageant ribbon. Cameron kissed my cheek. He has politician teeth and a salesman's handshake, but he tries to be kind, and I've decided trying counts. "Mom, sit here." Leah guided me to the center booth as if the spotlight lived there. "We ordered you the special. You love salmon, right?" I nodded. I do not love salmon. I love not ruining a party. People I've known for decades took turns standing up and telling stories the way people do when the coffee is hot and the sugar dispenser is mostly clumped. The church treasurer spoke about the time I found 7 missing dollars simply by shaking the offering envelope and listening. Dee from next door made the room laugh about the way I once chased a raccoon off my porch with a broom. Kara smiled at me like I was a well-behaved child. When Cameron joked that my chicken and dumplings had converted his whole CrossFit class, I should have asked if they tithed. Instead, I laughed like everyone else and clapped at the right places. I gave Leah the quilt before dessert. It took me 63 evenings, a spool and a half of buttercream thread, and 3 Band-Aids to finish. She lifted it for a picture, angled it toward the light, then folded it over on itself like a towel and said, "So sweet, Mom. We'll find a spot in the nursery closet." Closet. I have learned that people reveal themselves in the words they choose without thinking. After the last piece of cake and the shortest prayer, Leah clapped her hands once, business bright. "Quick heads up, Mom. Saturday I scheduled a tour at Magnolia Ridge. Nothing to decide, just getting you on the list. It'll give everyone peace of mind." Everyone. I kept my voice like honey because honey sticks better than vinegar. "We'll talk," I said. "Saturday's tough for me." Her smile flickered. A porch light with a loose bulb. Since when did I have tough Saturdays? Back home, the house in Simpsonville looked back at me the way only a house can, with windows like kind eyes. I set the quilt on the sofa and walked the hall, touching the places that hold the past the way quilts hold stitches. Leah's 4th grade art project, thumbtack slightly crooked, the scuff on the baseboard from her pink scooter, the dent in the living room arm where Cameron scraped his guitar case the Christmas he sang "Oh Holy Night" half step lower than written. I let my fingers rest in that dent the way you rest your shoulder and a familiar shoulder. I brewed the kind of tea my mother used to drink, the cheap kind that tastes like afternoons, and wrote myself one rule on an index card I stuck to the fridge with a watermelon magnet. No heroic speeches, no scenes. Start with small, quiet changes. On Monday, I didn't call Leah. On Tuesday, I didn't text. On Wednesday, she rang while I was labeling the spice jars I always meant to label. "Hey, Mom," she said, cheerful like a morning show. "Quick question. Can you hem the drapes Cameron ordered for his office? We want them done by Friday." I tapped the lid of the jar that said cumin. "Friday doesn't work for me." A beat. "Oh, are you okay?" "I am. I'm busy with some things." "Like what things?" I looked at my calendar. It was mostly church and grocery shopping and the words, "Call Deirdre about peaches." Between those little squares, there was space so wide you could fall right through and never be found. "Errands," I said. It wasn't a lie. One of my errands was to sit quietly on the porch for 30 minutes and see what my thoughts sound like when they aren't echoing someone else's needs. That afternoon, I met Dee at the Bluebird for coffee. She teaches line dancing at the community center on Thursdays and has an unassailable collection of visors with rhinestone phrases like "blessed" and "too legit to split." We slid into our usual booth where the formica is worn to a soft shine. "I overheard them," I said, easing sugar packets into the coffee so their paper didn't tear. "Papers Friday, list the house by spring, Magnolia Ridge to avoid drama." Dee blew across her cup and squinted at me over the rim. "Before you sign a thing," she said, "go to senior legal aid at the county courthouse. Wednesdays, second floor, past the vending machines with the sad crackers. Free consult. They'll tell you the truth about what those papers do." "Do you think Leah's trying to control me?" The word felt like picking up a hot pan without a mitt. "I think people get attached to the ease of you doing what keeps their lives smooth. And the minute you stop, they call it a problem." I walked out lighter. Not fixed, just lighter. Like I had finally set down a tote bag that didn't belong to me. Friday morning, instead of finding a notary, I walked through the courthouse doors that smelled like lemon cleaner and old air. A woman named Miss Chen at Senior Legal Aid slid paper toward me and used words like scope and durable and revoke, as if I were allowed to understand them. She drew little stars next to the lines I'd regret signing if I was rushed. She explained that power of attorney means power, and once you let it run wide, it doesn't necessarily run back. "So, if I sign this version," I said, tapping where she'd put a neat star, "and someone decides I'm inconvenient, could they sell my house?" "This one gives broad authority," she said, "but you don't have to sign anything today. You can choose who, choose what, and choose when. Your life, Mrs. Parker." My life, said out loud in a room where people usually arrive because they forgot what belongs to them. I walked onto the courthouse steps with August barking its heat, and for the first time since Thursday night, my lungs worked right. On Saturday, Leah pulled into my driveway with a floral folder and a notary. The notary blinked at the heat and said yes to a slice of pecan pie before she'd even sat down. Leah set her folder on my kitchen table, the one that has held school projects and roast chicken and late-night bills and 1,000 cups of coffee. Cameron stood behind her, upright as a new fence post. "It's simple," Leah said, sliding a pen toward me. "Initial here, here, and here. It just makes things easier if, God forbid, something happens. We'll get you the best room at Magnolia Ridge," Cameron added, like offering a sweet. I poured the notary a bigger slice and set a napkin under it because the syrup runs. Then I put the pen down. "I met with Senior Legal Aid. If I do this, it won't be today and it won't be broad. If I ever tour Magnolia Ridge, it will be because I want to see it, not because we're on a clock." Leah's mouth opened. She looked young and old all at once, like the first time she rode a two-wheeler, brave and furious. "Why would you go without telling me?" "Because I wanted to understand for myself." We're just trying to help, Cameron said. This house is a lot. Lawn care, repairs. I mow every Saturday morning, you know that. You borrowed my mower last month when yours choked on a pine cone. Mom, Leah said, voice tightened to a wire, you've been slipping. You forgot Macy's birthday call. I had. The choir director asked me to cover alto that day, and Happy Birthday lost its way in the list of casseroles and key changes. I apologized and brought her a scrapbook kit the next day. Leah pressed her lips together like she was holding in something messy. This is also about image, she said, deliberately casual. Cameron's firm has clients to entertain. When you tell stories about how hard it was when I was little, people make assumptions about us, about me. There it was, not even dressed for church. My cheeks heated, but my voice stayed steady, the way it does when a cake collapses and you serve it in bowls and call it a trifle. That's our truth. It got you where you are. It got me here too. It makes people uncomfortable, she said. It made me uncomfortable for decades, I said. I still showed up. Cameron cleared his throat. Maybe this is too much for a Saturday. It is, I said. Here's what I can do. I won't be touring Magnolia Ridge this month. If I ever do, it'll be because I choose to. We can have lunch next week. Thursday would be good. The notary took another bite of pie and Leah blinked and nodded, then blinked again like recalculating a route. On Monday, I moved the guest bed against the wall and turned the spare room into a sewing and writing room. I pulled my best lamp in there, the one that makes thread look like it's lit from within. I taped a clean calendar to the wall and wrote 2 words in the empty square under Saturday. My plans. Then I did a radical thing I hadn't done since Leah was small, and pennies still meant something. I put $40 cash in an envelope and wrote Adventures on the front. Tuesday, I drove to the community college on South Pleasantburg Drive and slid into a chair at the back of Basic Computers, a room full of women my age who walked like they knew how to carry both grief and groceries. The instructor showed us how to set up email. I created June.Parker at something simple and watched my name glow on a bright screen like it had been waiting for me. When she taught us to make folders, I titled one June's Projects and saved it just to feel the click. Wednesday, I walked the Swamp Rabbit Trail with Dee, who wore a visor that said blessed and rhinestones and carried a water bottle big enough to bathe a cat. We waved at retirees with Nordic walking sticks and kids on scooters and a grandpa in a Clemson hat who told the same joke to everyone and laughed first so they wouldn't be afraid to laugh. A girl had set up a lemonade stand with plastic cups, ice melting like a small defeat. I bought 2 and tipped her outrageous. When she asked why, I said, because you showed up. And she grinned like a sunrise. Thursday, I walked into Brook Hollow Assisted Living and found the director, a woman with sensible shoes and a clipboard, and I asked if they needed volunteers. We'd be thrilled, she said. What can you do? Quilts, I said. And it felt like saying my line in a play I'd rehearsed alone for years. Within a week, I was leading 3 residents through a 9-patch. Irene, 81, with a braid as thick as a rope, called me Coach. We used charm squares and seam rippers and patience. The first block they held up looked like a small country of hope. I cried in my car, then went home and cut more squares. Friday, I dropped 4 tiny blankets at the hospital for the NICU. A nurse with tired eyes and a kind mouth took them like I'd brought her medicine. She said, "You have no idea." On the way out, I passed a brand new dad pushing a brand new mom in a wheelchair. She held a baby so tight it looked like she carried 2 hearts. I sat in the lobby a moment, breathing in the smell of coffee, antiseptic, and beginning. 2 weeks later, Leah texted, Can you watch Macy and Jay's Saturday, 5 to 10? We have a dinner. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Memory quilts, Brook Hollow, 4 to 6. Then chicken salad at the diner with Dee because we'd been promising ourselves we'd order dessert first one night. I typed slowly. I can do Sunday after church, noon at 3. Saturday I'm booked. A bubble appeared. Disappeared. Appeared. Okay, she wrote. We'll figure something out. Sunday, after church, she stood on my porch with the kids and a reusable grocery bag of snacks. The kids ran to me like I was a trampoline. Leah hung back. Mom, she said, are you mad at me? I love you, and I'm done proving it by being available 24/7. She nodded, eyes glossy, the way you nod when you expected to be punched and got hugged instead. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The county fair announced a call for local artisans, and Dee pressed a finger into my shoulder. She said, enter the big stormy blue quilt, the one you keep saving for later. Later is a trap. So I entered. Then I panicked. Then I laid the quilt across my bed and ran my hand over the stitches until my breathing matched the rhythm. The fair smelled like funnel cake, cut hay, and sunscreen. A teenager sang Landslide on the community stage and managed to make 3 married couples cry without turning her head. A toddler with a balloon on his wrist kept trying to lift his arm like maybe he'd float. When a volunteer pinned a blue ribbon to my quilt, a woman I'd never seen touched the binding with reverence. She asked how much. I have never priced my own work. I said the first number that felt like I wouldn't cry to say out loud. 200. She didn't blink. I'll take it. On Sunday, I set the blue ribbon on the table next to the fried chicken I'd made for lunch, and Leah picked it up like she was testing how heavy pride is. Mom, she said, truly impressed and a little startled. That's amazing. I'm teaching Saturdays now, too, I said. Brook Hollow, memory quilts. Her face did a small recalculation, like a GPS rerouting after a missed turn. I didn't realize you wanted to teach. I didn't realize I was allowed, I said, not unkindly. A few weeks later, the hospital called me by name when I dropped off another stack of NICU blankets. June, would you come to the volunteer appreciation reception? It was in a small multi-purpose room with lemonade and a plastic dispenser and grocery store cookies arranged with the care of a wedding cake. They showed slides of babies wearing knitted hats and quilts that looked like stories. A young mom held up a photo and said, "Whoever made this, thank you." The chaplain handed me a paper certificate with my name spelled right, and I cried again in the car because some papers take away and some papers give back. I texted Leah a picture of the certificate, the way a third grader sends a perfect spelling test. She called instead of texted. "Mom," she said, softer than I've heard her in years. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you," I said. "You've always been everything," she said. "I think I forgot. I helped with what you needed. I didn't ask what I needed." "I didn't ask either," she said, and we let the line rest between us, like a table we were both willing to set. I met Miss Chin at the courthouse again, this time with a purple folder I labeled June's Decisions. We wrote it down the way I want it. Medical proxy to Dee, because she stays steady when the boat rocks. Limited financial authority to Leah for true emergencies if I cannot decide. And a clear note that my house is not to be listed, sold, or promised while I am competent and living in it. We printed copies and signed what needed signing. "You can change any of this later," Miss Chin said, "because it's yours." I walked out taller. I texted Leah a picture of the purple folder. She sent back a heart and then another message. If you ever want to see Magnolia Ridge, just to know, we'll go because you want to look. Maybe someday, I replied. For now, Brook Hollow needs more squares cut. Bring me next time, she wrote. Cameron came by one Saturday with a level and a toolbox. I owe you for that gouge, he nodded toward the living room arm. Leah says you're hanging shelves for your ribbon collection. He measured twice and asked where I wanted the brackets, instead of telling me where they should go. He patched the gouge without making a speech. We ate peach cobbler on the steps, and he told me about a client who mailed him a thank you note written in cursive. Meant more than any online review, he said. Paper is forever, I said. Tell that to my generation. He laughed. And for the first time, he looked my age, even though he's decades younger. On a bright Sunday, Leah picked me up for the Greenville Center for Creative Arts. The gallery had a textile exhibit, quilts hung like windows into other people's patience. I pointed out how you can tell hand-pieced from machine-pieced, how a quilter's mood shows up in the length of the stitch, how some borders are forgiveness for corners that won't meet. Leah's eyes took on a shine I recognized from when she discovered in 5th grade that she could multiply bigger numbers than she thought. I had no idea, she said, which is a gentle way to apologize for not asking sooner. We ate shrimp and grits at a place with brick walls and Edison bulbs, food that makes you forgive the world for at least an hour. We split a lemon pie and justified it by promising to walk afterward, which we did, past dog bowls set outside shop doors and a chalkboard listing tonight's specials like a dare. At the red light, Leah reached for my hand. I'm sorry I treated your history like something to hide, she said. I'm sorry I waited this long to honor it myself, I said, and the light turned green. Fall has a way of making everything look honest. The mums on my porch bloomed like whispers. The air sharpened. The light turned gold as if God preferred that filter after Labor Day. My calendar held things I wrote there because I wanted them. Choir rehearsal, memory quilts, Dee's birthday at the diner, fair committee meeting, NICU drop-off, the community college craft sale, coffee with Beatrice from the choir who started painting birds after her husband died and sells them at the church bazaar next to jars of pickles. Leah and Cameron started asking, does Friday work for you? Instead of, we need you Friday. When I said yes, I meant it. When I said no, I meant that too. Somehow, we loved each other cleaner in the air that left room to breathe. There were still moments, the ones that remind you growth isn't a straight line. Leah sent me an article about downsizing for your safety, and I sent her a selfie from my push mower with my hair in a bandana and the yard looking like a fresh haircut. Cameron forgot and told me once that I shouldn't worry my pretty head about escrow when I asked about paperwork, and I taught him the difference between don't worry and don't learn with a look. We laugh about it now. The laugh is new. In late October, the church hosted a chili cook-off in the parking lot and a hayride that somehow made a loop through 3 neighborhoods. I made cornbread and wore the blue ribbon on my sweater because I like to practice receiving good things without shrinking them. During cleanup, the youth pastor knocked over a gallon of lemonade and apologized like he'd broken an heirloom. I told him if it won't matter in a month, it doesn't get a meltdown today. He hugged me with those sad eyes boys get when they haven't slept enough. At Brook Hollow, Irene finished her 9-patch, and we stitched it to a backing and tied it off with red knots like tiny cherries. She held it to her chest and said, I didn't know I could still start something and finish it. I wrote her name in the corner with a fine point fabric pen, like putting a flag on a small country. One Saturday, the hospital hosted a volunteer brunch, store-bought muffins and powdered sugar donuts. And one of the NICU nurses told us how the quilts get used as weights on the tiniest babies because they sleep better under a little comfort. She said they sometimes tuck a corner into the carrier when the baby finally goes home so the mother can hold the first softness from the hospital in one hand and her child in the other. I drove home carefully, like my car was full of glass. The first cold snap arrived on a Tuesday night. I turned the heat on and the vents coughed like they do every year, like old men clearing their throats. I took a hot bath, put on socks I can only describe as shameless, and read a library book about women who reinvented themselves after 60. I saw myself in every chapter, and in none. Because reinvention sounds loud and sparkly, and mine has been quiet as thread. The next day, Leah called from the parking lot at her OB appointment. I could hear the beep of cars locking and unlocking. "We need to talk about holidays." "I've been thinking about that too," I said. "I want to host this Saturday after Thanksgiving. Potluck, games. I'll make the turkey if Cameron will carve. If that's too much for you this year, we can also do soup and sandwiches and call it grace." She laughed, relieved at the choices. "I like the second one," she said. "Lower bar, more laughter." "Agreed," I said. "Soup forgives late arrivals." We did soup and sandwiches and laughter, and I sent everybody home with quart containers because a quart of soup can fix you faster than a text message can. When Leah hugged me at the door, her belly pressed between us like a bright comma. December brought lights on houses and people being kinder than they realize. I put a wreath on my door that smells like someone else's forest. I sang alto at the choir program and hit the high note, not because I can, but because spirit carried me there. I stood in the vestibule afterward with a styrofoam cup of punch, and people touched my elbow and said beautiful, as if the word belonged to me for a minute. I took it and didn't give it back too quickly. New Year's Eve, I fell asleep at 10 and woke to fireworks anyway. The sound rattled the windows and made me think of knees knocking and hearts trying not to. I sat up, turned on the lamp in the sewing room, and stitched 10 more inches of binding. A new year is just the next day wearing a sash. The real change is in the stitch, slow and steady, pulled through with purpose. In January, Leah had a scare. Nothing that turned out to be something, but enough to sit the whole family down in fear for a day. I brought her applesauce in mason jars and the quilt she had folded for the closet. "Let's use this now," I said, spreading it across her lap. "Closets can wait." She touched the stitches one by one like counting prayer beads. "It makes me feel calm," she said. "That's why women invented quilts, to hold a person in the time it takes to breathe again." February thawed a little. The church replaced 2 ceiling tiles that had carried water stains, shaped like the state of Florida, and everyone missed those stains more than we expected. Cameron asked me to look over a contract for the trim work he and a friend were installing on the side for extra cash. And when I asked my questions, he didn't say pretty head or anything like it. He said, "That's a good catch," and changed the clause. We ate grilled cheese and tomato soup afterward and argued about whether pickles belong on the plate or on the sandwich. On the plate, because the brine ruins the bread. He was wrong. He admitted it. We shook on it. In March, we drove to Magnolia Ridge because I wanted to look. The lobby smelled like lemon and lilies. Residents played checkers in a sunny corner, and a woman in a lavender sweater asked me if I was the new bridge partner she'd been promised. "Not today," I said. Leah and I sat in a model room and talked about someday, which is a word that makes some people cry and other people plan. I took the brochure home and put it in the purple folder. I didn't hide it. I also didn't put it on the fridge. The baby arrived on a rainy night that tasted like tin if you stepped outside. I sat in the family waiting area with an old man wearing an army jacket and a teenage girl who sang under her breath without realizing it. The nurse came to get me, and there she was, my granddaughter, wrapped like a burrito, eyes serious, lips like a far-off piece of fruit. "June," Leah said, sweaty and radiant. "Meet Avery." I held Avery, and time collapsed. It was then Thanksgiving, in 1992, and a Tuesday we will forget, and the day Leah took her first step, and the day my mother died, and some future afternoon when Avery will bring her science fair project to my porch to show me how her volcano erupts with dignity. I whispered, "You are loved," into a tiny ear, and I knew I was whispering to myself, too, to the girl I was at 12 and at 29 and at 50, and to the woman holding a baby blanket like a certificate of honor. After Avery, everything softened and sharpened at once. Sleep disappeared from Leah's house, replaced by laundry and astonishment. I came when they asked and left before I was tired. I washed bottles and didn't rearrange their cabinets. I kissed the top of a small head and didn't correct the way they swaddled because the baby doesn't care about corners. She cares about warmth. We learned each other's pace like we were sharing a song. Spring laid itself across Greenville like a quilt you forgot you had. The Swamp Rabbit Trail filled with people pretending they liked jogging. The Bluebird put a sign on the door that said, "Strawberry pie backed by popular demand." The fair committee met, and I volunteered to organize the craft tent. The NICU called to ask if we could make slightly larger blankets for babies that just needed a push to get to the good weight. I said yes, and Brook Hollow helped, and we stitched in a row like history class and gossip. One quiet Tuesday evening, I took my mail to the kitchen table. A catalog selling clothes I refused to try, a church newsletter, a fundraiser letter that misspelled my name with 2 O's, and an envelope from an insurance company with a logo that looked like a helpful hand. I called Miss Chin with 2 questions. She answered both without making me feel foolish, and when I hung up, I made myself a grilled cheese with 2 kinds of cheese, because one kind can be lonely. Leah called that night to ask if I could come Friday afternoon so she could nap. "Yes," I said, 2 to 4. Then I added, "I have a potluck at church at 6, and Saturday morning is memory quilts." She said, "I love hearing your schedule." And for a second, I didn't know whether to cry or laugh, so I did both, which is a healthy use of time. Avery and I built rituals. We dance in the kitchen to the radio, and I narrate what I'm doing the way preschool teachers do. Now Nana is making coffee, and we do not touch the hot thing. Now Nana is folding laundry, and we love the smell of clean shorts. Now Nana is reading Goodnight Moon, and we cannot believe how much a person can love a room. One afternoon, as Avery slept on my chest, Leah sat cross-legged on the floor and said, "Do you ever feel guilty for wanting your own time?" "All the time," I said. "Then I remember I'm better at loving you when I'm a person and not a shadow." She nodded. I didn't understand that until this baby. We learn when we're ready, not when someone hollers at us to learn. Summer arrived like it was late and trying to make up ground. The air turned thick enough to chew, and the Bluebird added a watermelon salad to the menu that tasted like they invented July. I hung Avery's first pictures on my fridge with a magnet shaped like South Carolina. Cameron fixed the loose tile on the back steps without arguing with the tile because he's learning too. The fair came around again, and this time Leah entered a baby sling she stitched by hand under my loud supervision. She won a red ribbon, second place, and held it like a sash of truth. "I can make things," she said, surprised. "Of course you can," I said. "You always could. You just forgot to give yourself permission to start." By the second fall since the Bluebird dinner, the porch mums were bigger, my calendar was fuller, and the dent in the living room arm had a story we liked to tell. I stood on my porch one morning, watering the ferns, and watched a neighbor boy wobble on a bicycle until wobbling turned into balance, the way fear turns into competence right in front of your eyes. He didn't notice the moment he stopped almost falling. He just kept going. His mother clapped and didn't run alongside him the whole way like she had when he was smaller. She waved and went inside to live her own day.
For a long time, I believed love meant jogging beside the bike forever, breathing hard and steadying the seat when the road pitched. Now I know that love is also letting go when it's time, waving, and going home to put your own name on your own calendar. It's meeting later at the diner to listen to their story and to tell yours, ordering the pie first because we can, and making sure everyone leaves with a slice wrapped in foil for the next morning when life will be ordinary again, the best kind of morning, the kind stitched to the next one and the next. Some nights I sit on the porch with a glass of iced tea, the good kind with lemon, and I think about papers. Some papers take from you, some papers give back. The one Leah waved in a parking lot, that was a taking paper. The purple folder on my shelf, those are giving papers. The certificates from the hospital and the county fair, those are gifts. And the paper with the pencil grocery list is the most practical blessing of all. We need bananas. We need bread. We need thread. If you told me 2 years ago that my life would widen at 66, I would have smiled politely and asked about your garden. I didn't know my world was a room with a door it could open. I didn't know my daughter would meet me there with apologies and soup. I didn't know a simple envelope labeled adventures could be a declaration. I didn't know quiet could be the loudest way to change. But I know now. I know that when I choose what to do with my mornings, I walk into the day like it already wants me there. I know that when I put a quilt into a nurse's hands, I am placing warmth in a place that is often cold. I know that when Leah asks, "Does Friday work for you?" it means we've both learned a new language. I know that when Cameron stands in my living room and waits for me to tell him where the shelves go, he is listening. I know that when Avery falls asleep on my shoulder and I count her breaths, the world is exactly as fragile and sturdy as it has always been, and the only answer is to love it. And I know this: self-respect is the root system under love. When you water your roots, the whole family tree grows straighter. Boundaries aren't walls, they're fences with gates that open from both sides. My gate is open. I set a chair there some evenings so I can sit and wave at the people I love as they come and go. I kept a seat for myself, too, right next to the door, because I live here, because this is my house, because this is my life, and I finally act like it. One more small thing. When I fold laundry now, I fold it like prayer, slow, with thanks. I smooth the shirts and match the socks and stack the towels according to height, and when I finish, I sit a minute and admire the order. It's not prideful. It's appreciative, like pressing a palm to a warm hood after a long drive and saying to the car and the road and the you who drove it, "We did this. We got here. We can rest and we can go again." On a clear Saturday in October, after memory quilts and before soup at the Bluebird, I stopped by the fairgrounds to drop off flyers for the craft tent. A little girl stood under the shade of a sweet gum tree, blowing bubbles that rose and drifted and popped in that gentle way that still startles you a little. She had Avery's serious eyes and a gap in her teeth like a tiny front door. "Want to blow a bubble?" she asked, holding out the wand. I did. I blew with my whole mouth, the way you do when you play at something like you mean it. And a bubble swelled, caught a scrap of sunlight, and floated up and up until it was too far for us to follow. We watched it together, one old, one new, both of us quiet with a good kind of awe. "Where'd it go?" she asked. "Exactly where it needed to," I said. And I smiled so big my face hurt, which is a very fine pain to have.